Hello, good afternoon. I'm back to go over some more information. I had mentioned in a couple previous videos that I was going to go over some baseline lab work with you. And before I do that, I just wanted to say, I started this channel, not knowing whether anybody would be interested in it. And I've just been so humbled and blessed to see that there's people watching my videos, and I have some people that have subscribed to this channel, and it's actually been quite a surprise for me. I mean, I have so many insecurities about myself, and I look at myself and I go, why would anybody want to listen to what I have to say or watch a video that I make? So it's been very amazing and very humbling to have people actually listen and watch the videos that I'm making. So I just want to thank you for watching, and I hope that following my carnivore journey, I can bring some value to your life. And I know that doing this is bringing value to my life. It's definitely helping me to stay on track. And so far, I know I'm just starting, but I have felt like quitting already. It's only the second week, and I've already been asking myself, why am I doing this? Is this worth it? I feel like, I definitely have been dealing with some cravings and, my side effects from, or my transition, my body transitioning onto, this diet is actually starting to improve. So that's good. Um, but anyways, it's helpful for me to actually make videos and to, um, if someone's out there watching, if you're out there watching it, it motivates me. So I really appreciate that. So anyways, I'm going to put the lab values either here or here, not sure. We'll see how this works out once I edit the video. But I've got them on my phone that I'm going to look at. And I do have some notes too because I did look up a few things. I'm a nurse, so I do know a lot about labs, but I did need a bit of a refresher. And not every lab that I'm going to go over um, are labs that doctors necessarily order all the time, or they don't necessarily order them for patients in the hospital. I've never worked in a primary care setting, so some of these labs are ones that would be more likely to be ordered by a primary care doctor. So I did need to go back and do a little bit of a refresher on some of them. But so my glucose levels now, just before I actually dive into this, these are labs from back October of last year. So I did connect with my naturopathic doctor and ask if it would be worthwhile to get some updated labs. So I'm kind of waiting to hear back from him. But these are the last set of labs that I have. Now, I was on the standard American diet back then, so hopefully this will be a reflection of how I was doing on that diet. My glucose levels, fasting glucose levels, were a little bit high. I put the normal ranges here too, so you can see how high. They were 106, so a little bit high. I'm certain that I have insulin resistance. There's no doubt in my mind. Cholesterol levels were generally okay other than my LDL. My LDL cholesterol was high at 127, but look at those triglycerides. My goodness, 140. So that's good. They're well within the range. My overall cholesterol was pushing the limit, but okay. And my HDL was just barely over what it should be. There's a lot of room for the HDL to go a lot higher, so hopefully that will happen. Hemoglobin A1C put me in the pre-diabetic range. And this lab, let's see, was second or third lab that I had. The previous lab was, I think earlier that year, I was at 5.6. So I was at 5.8 here. Now, keep in mind that I had been on medical leave since last June and feeling very ill and very low energy and pretty much just laying around all year. So I'm sure that influenced it. I was incredibly sedentary last year, had no energy to do a whole lot, especially self-care, like maybe shower once a week because that's all that I had energy for. So I'm sure that was reflected in a lot of what you see here. Let's see here. So vitamin D levels are kind of borderline low, which I live in the Pacific Northwest. So up here, it's a lot of people are vitamin D deficient. So I really need. Okay, it looked like my screen froze, so I just restarted it. So hopefully it's better now. Um, anyway, so vitamin D, I should probably be taking some supplements. All right, so before I get into the C-reactive protein and the tryptase, I want to jump down to this um, I think it's pronounced apolipoprotein B, and explain what that is, because this is a specialized test that my naturopathic doctor ordered. And so I kind of dove in just to remind myself what this was, and dove in a little bit and just looked at cholesterol in general. And I came across an interesting article. I think this was from Harvard Medicine. And I never really studied cholesterol too much. As a nurse, we just kind of, people come to the hospital with whatever cholesterol levels they have. And if they are on a statin, we give them their statin. And they have a lower fat diet, and the typical Western American way of approaching cholesterol. But the Harvard Medicine article that I was looking at says that only about 20% of the cholesterol in your bloodstream comes from the food that you eat. The other 80% is actually produced in your body. It's made in your liver and in your intestines. So, with that said, a proper functioning liver and gut is extremely important. And your gut actually makes cholesterol. Cholesterol is needed, it's very crucial for part of the building blocks of your cell membrane. So, it's extremely important for that. It's needed to make vitamin D. It's also needed to make hormones, including estrogen and testosterone, and it's needed for making fat dissolving bile acids. So, cholesterol is very important in the body. So, this apolipoprotein B is actually like the backbone of the cholesterols, the low density cholesterols in your body. There is an apolipoprotein A, which I believe is the backbone of the high density lipoproteins. But cholesterol doesn't circulate in your body and get used up in your body alone. It has to be bound to fat, a lipid molecule. So they come in these little bundles, and all the little molecules are attached to this apolipoprotein. So I did a little bit of digging, and basically it says that it's made in the liver. Okay, so there's two types of lipoproteins. One's made in the gut, and the other is made in the liver. And the one that's made in the liver is released into the bloodstream as the very low density lipoprotein. So that's how it comes out initially. So your body produces that, and then it loses a triglyceride. It releases a triglyceride, turns into intermediate density lipoprotein, which then converts to the low density lipoprotein. Low density lipoprotein is the one that everyone says, is bad if you have it too high, because it supposedly will cling to your arteries and create these plaques. Now, when I was in nursing school, I distinctly remember my instructor saying, okay, look, these low density lipoproteins need to have something to cling to. Your arteries are, when they're not inflamed, and they're not all nicked up by sugar, are smooth. So it's really not so much the cholesterol that's the problem as much as it is inflammation and sugar. When you eat a lot of sugar, and sugar goes through your, works its way through your vascular system, it makes these little tiny micro nicks on your blood vessels. And that creates a bit of a rough surface that these little molecules of cholesterol can stick to. So the LDLs need a rough surface to stick to, and sugar does that. So the more sugar that you eat, and the more it creates these little micro nicks on your arteries, the more likely that those LDLs are going to stick to your arteries and form plaques. Now, the plaques alone, yes, can clog your arteries. That's a problem, but it's a huge deal if you have inflammation. Inflammation in your body is not just things like, your joints, your muscles hurting, your vascular system, your blood vessels can also be inflamed. And when the blood vessels become inflamed, that inflammation can release those plaques. And sometimes people end up with a blood clot, or it clogs your coronary artery, causes a heart attack. So it's definitely important to reduce the inflammation in your body. So I thought that was kind of interesting, a little bit of details about cholesterol. But this, according to the Mayo Clinic, this apolipoprotein B is actually a better indicator of cardiovascular risk than LDL cholesterol. Because even people that have normal LDL cholesterol can have an elevated apolipoprotein B. So if you haven't had this test done, maybe talk to your doctor about getting this particular blood test. Apparently, it's kind of gaining popularity, but according to what I've read, a lot of, not quite yet. There's a lot of doctors who don't order it. I think it's a little more expensive than just testing your cholesterol. But if it's a better indicator of your cardiovascular risk, then it would be worthwhile to get it done. So, with that said, mine is a little bit elevated. Now, I did read, that over 120 is more concerning. Like under 90 is optimal, but up to 120 is still acceptable. So, mine was 106. So, not optimal, but it's still in the acceptable range. And so, I'm not super concerned that there's anything urgent going on with my cardiovascular risk. I have time to work on it. So, which I'm planning on doing, and I'm doing with this carnivore diet. I'm really curious to see whether or not, as I lose weight, that this APO test goes down. So then I'm going to back up to the C-reactive protein cardiac. So the C-reactive protein is an inflammatory marker, and it's something that's produced in the liver when there's inflammation present in the body. Mine, now the one that was run was specific to cardiac, to kind of evaluate cardiac risk. So unfortunately, anything, over 10 is considered highly elevated. Now, it can be elevated for a number of reasons. And if you look up all the reasons why your CRP can be elevated, and I look through the list, I don't have any of those risk factors at all. But the key with me is that I have mast cell activation syndrome, and there are people with mast cell activation syndrome who have chronically elevated C-reactive protein levels. So that's definitely me. My C-reactive protein levels have been elevated for as long as I can remember. So as I'm doing this diet, I'm really curious to see if those levels come down, because that might be an indicator that maybe my MCAS is getting better. It definitely will be an indicator that my systemic inflammation is getting better. So, but that number, I guess, kind of scares me a little bit, because, again, when you talk about inflammation, it includes things like your arteries, your vascular system, includes your brain, includes everything. So, hopefully, cross my fingers. It's been as high as 25 in the past. I think I had an infection then. So infection is one thing that can increase your C-reactive protein. And then lastly, my tryptase levels. So tryptase is something that you don't have to worry about unless you have my condition. So, but it is one of the many, many chemicals that is produced in your body by your mast cells. Anything over, well, what I've read is anything over 11 is concerning, but the range here, has up to 13.2 is normal. But there's a lot of the doctors that are, the doctors that actually specialize in treating mast cell activation syndrome, think that number should be lower. So basically, tryptase is a chemical that's released as normally. I mean, people who have normally functioning mast cells release tryptase, just like they release histamine, they release heparin. There's over 200 different chemical mediators that are released by your mast cells because they're a key part of your immune system. And your immune system, those mast cells are looking and going through your body and looking for anything that it needs to fight, and they're releasing those chemicals to fight on your behalf. Mine are just doing it for whatever reason they want. They are overactive. I also have a condition called hereditary alpha tryptosemia, which genetically, when my mast cells release chemicals, they release extra copies of tryptase. So my tryptase is high, and people with hereditary alpha tryptosemia, their tryptase levels can range. Mine's maybe, I don't know if it's a little higher than average, but um, I'm on medication that my naturopathic doctor has prescribed to try to get that level down, because how high it is, I don't know if it's how it affects how I feel, but we're just kind of trying to see if we can get the levels down. So I'm watching that number, but that number is more specific to just my condition. So, anyways, I'll stop there. I wanted to go through and get this information out there so you can see where I'm at right now. I'm very, very thankful that I'm not diabetic. I don't have that complication at this point, and I hope to completely avoid that. I hope that on this diet that my hemoglobin A1C levels go back down out of that pre-diabetic range. I'm not overly concerned about my LDL cholesterol. I'd like to get my HDL up more, because HDL is the good cholesterol, because what it does is it goes around, it goes through your bloodstream, and it gathers up that extra low density cholesterol and takes it back to the liver to be reprocessed. So if you have enough HDL, hopefully it'll do a better job of gathering up all that excess LDL. But key thing is that your body produces 80% of the cholesterol that you need. So I found that really interesting, and so I'm not sure really how much our diet is really impacting, because I would imagine that if your body needs a certain amount of cholesterol, unless you have something genetically wrong with you where you like produce too much cholesterol on your own, I would think that your liver and your gut would kind of adjust how much it's producing to, factor in your diet and say, okay, well, this is how much cholesterol this person has eaten. So this is how much I need to produce. So if you eat less, it produces more. If you eat more, it produces less. I don't know if it works that way, but logically it seems like it should. Um, so you think that your body can gauge how much it needs to produce. Now, I don't know if that's the way it works, but it just kind of seems logical that it might work that way. If if there's an article or something that you've seen that explains that, put it in a comment. Let me know. This is something that anything medical I'm really interested in. But anyways, I just am not too worried about that LDL cholesterol, because I figure, if my liver's working fine, my gut's working fine, then hopefully my body is producing the cholesterol that it needs and not overproducing. And my gut actually is working fine. So I'm happy about that. So anyways, that's it for today. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.